What is up? What is up, YouTube? This is part 2. This is juicy, man. My man was getting real deep on a lot of different things, and I gotta agree. He know what he talking about. So, FD, is it Seinfeld? Singlifer. FD Singlifer. Took a minute. I'm like, that looks weird the way it was written, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, shout out to the brother, man. It's bigger than Diddy. Yeah, this whole thing, how he's breaking it down is incredible. So anyway, this is part 2, man. Y'all know Uncle Mike crazy. So y'all hit that subscribe button, hit that bell. Let's check it out. Part 2, y'all. Here we go.
9/11 happened, and the concept of global terrorism was etched into the American psyche along with the inception of our modern surveillance state. The crack era was dying, yes, but the meth era was on the rise. The AIDS epidemic was still happening. There was an economic collapse and a recession in the late 2000s, and that's just the things that we knew about that were carried on our news and airwaves.
Hey guys, thank you for watching our videos. If you want to check out our live channel, the Music Recording Network Live, where we dive deeper into videos that we put up and talk about different things that's going on in the world. You can participate in our chat, or you can come on live. You don't even have to show your face. Go to our live channel, subscribe, voice your opinion, because we would like to hear from you and help us come up with solutions. Now, let's continue on with this video.
There were plenty of things happening that weren't even allowed to make a blip on our social or cultural radar at the time because we didn't have social media to inform us. But in the middle of all of that, hip hop was experiencing its most popular and lucrative era. I don't know if glamour is the right word. I'll let you kind of depict it the way you want. But like the fly lifestyle that you were a dancer at top 3 strip club in the country, right?
Right.
And so you saw these people come in and throwing money, and it was like a video.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I remember
they made videos in there.
Right.
Times.
I'll never forget. It might have been the one time I actually saw you there and they did a surfboard move.
Yeah, the swag surf.
And that shit was amazing. Right? So like, I don't want to act like I'm not gonna, and I don't want to act like, oh, strip clubs are awful and everybody needs to be ashamed and put their clothes on and whatever. Like, no, shit is dope.
I had a hell of a time.
Right.
Like, I was just telling somebody the other day, trying to explain this whole lifestyle to them. I was like, when Jeezy said, I got nights, I can't remember nights, I was like, no, I felt that in my soul. Like, we would be going so hard. It was almost shameful. Not even on no predatory shit. You just get too drunk. You know what I'm saying? Like, just because they would party all, like, it wasn't just like the clubs would close and then those individuals can pay to keep the clubs open. Like there were several Mondays at Magic City that somebody would pay to keep the club open. They pick out like 10 girls and keep the club open like an extra 2 hours. I don't remember the exact deals. Like each one would get a different deal. But the management was pretty cool at trying to take care of us, especially too, of course. So like the dudes would have like a bar minimum and they'd have to buy so many ones and, you know, spend them during this hour or 2. And so that would be that. So like the club was already closed at 3 and now you there till 5. And then you got to count all this goddamn money between 10 girls. Like it's 7 or 8 before you get home.
Wow.
That also sounds awesome. It might be because of how troublesome the time was that someone like Diddy was so popular, because his infectious energy made us all forget what was really happening, even as he was in our face telling us to vote or die. I will never forget that campaign. That one was wild.
Puff Daddy?
My friend Kyle told me you don't understand the importance of voting. Apparently you haven't heard of my vote or die campaign.
Vote or die? What the hell does that even mean?
What you think it means, bitch.
Diddy helped create an image of hip hop that was still full of bravado and swag and edge, but without the genuine danger or fear inducing radicalism that hip hop had in the previous decade. The resistance to hip hop died down and the dollar signs livened up, and suddenly commercially viable crossover rap was everywhere. Rappers that would have been much more street or gritty like a DMX or Cameron suddenly became more flashy and party oriented. There were a series of commercial hits from well-established legends like LL Cool J, Jay-Z, Snoop Dogg, and the criminally underrated Busta Rhymes. Newcomers in the 2000s such as Ludacris and Nelly and Lil Jon released mega hit after mega hit. And then there were a million different one-hit wonders that gave us amazing moments like Chingy, Murphy Lee, Slim Thug, D4L. Hardcore fans and purists even still got fed with the Locks and the Roots and Slum Village, Most Def, Common, Talib Kweli, and early Kanye West. And even the women of hip hop had strong representation, as this is Missy's most dominant era, and we get great moments from Eve and Trina, and an underrated classic from Rod Digger that nobody talks about enough. And all of this is happening while Kanye and Wayne are on like legendary runs that are paralleling each other, but somehow not crossing over, but creating like this yin and yang of all the amazing things that hip hop are able to do. Another cool thing happening is that we see the emergence of the mega hit like star producer. But again, Diddy made it so that being just the hit maker behind the scenes made you a star as well. This is when we first start getting the producer tag, like Just Blaze. Pump it up. Just Blaze. Just Blaze.
Yeah, that's hot.
I really like doing it. I'm sorry. The Neptunes had their boom, boom, boom. Swizzy, Scott Storch, Timbaland, a bunch of others. Again, I can't think of. Not everybody was doing the tag thing, but it was so many producers that were stars in and of themselves. You just wanted to hear what they were going to do with a particular rap star.
How many of y'all love hip hop?
Hip hop in the 2000s was a moment for a lifetime. It was ubiquitous. It was a party like no other. You couldn't turn on the TV or the radio and not see hip hop in its shiniest, loudest, funnest, coolest, most commodifiable form.
I met this girl when I was 10 years old. What I love most, she had so much soul. Might check it up.
Some saw the commercialization and money chase and the materialism as a detrimental thing long term. Some saw the road that this path would eventually lead us to.
It ain't nothing like hip hop music. It ain't nothing like hip hop music.
But even those folks, many of them purists, weren't paying attention to the big problem below the surface.
Universal.
Because yeah, it was a party circa 1998 to 2010, but the party was only happening to this level because of certain folks that didn't get enough credit. But if you've ever been to a party, you know that for it to be good, it has to have three things: music, alcohol, and the most significant part of this story that I haven't gotten to yet,
the women.
Stressing how hardcore and real she is. Really the realest before she got into showbiz. I did her, not just to say I did it, but I'm committed. But so many brothers hit it, she's not the same letting all these groupies do her. I see Mark slamming her and taking her to the sewer. I'ma take her back, hoping that the shit stop. Who I'm talking about, y'all? Hip-hop.
That's crazy, man.
Album release, because you got to do the whole city, you got to do the whole circuit.
Yeah. When
you're getting ready to let an album out, and so like Jeezy used to bring them up in there a lot. Tip came through, and then whoever else, I can't remember everybody right now, but like, you know, all of our locals. Whenever you needed to drop your single, everybody knew you got to take it to the strip club first.
So actually, so that brings up a big point. We'll transition somewhat. Is like, I don't think people fully appreciate how intertwined hip hop became with the strip club.
So it was both ends of the spectrums, because all of those strip club DJs worked with local artists. Like all of them had hoop aspirations too, right? As a dancer, you are a big fish in a small pond. Like you can't fit every bad bitch in Atlanta in Magic City. Like that's not the breadth of them. There were hundreds of thousands of just non-stripper girls walking around Atlanta who were absolutely beautiful. But when you walk into Magic City, that's my domain, right? And if you are a top 5 in Magic City, or any strip club, any strip club, because you know White Chocolate didn't work with us. So at Magic City, she ran her own shit at Strokers, and that's why she stayed there, because she ran that shit, and I respect. Like that's how you do it. It was definitely a reversal of power sometimes, right? Like those men are in there and they're overwhelmed with all the selections, and you pick what you want.
And here's where things rightfully get uncomfortable. So let's start out with a little story. The year is 1999, and I'm 17 years old, sitting at home watching music videos on TV, because that's where we used to watch music videos. And suddenly it's this new video from probably my favorite rapper at the time, Busta Rhymes, off his most recent album, Extinction Level Event. And it's one of my favorite songs, Tear the Roof Off / Party Going On Over Here.
Yo, flip won't hit you off. Yo, y'all know what to do, okay?
As I said in a previous video on the B-sides, Busta doesn't get enough credit as a rapper, especially considering the incredibly dominant run he was on in the late 90s to the early 2000s, and his ability to be like super lyrical, street, but also make club bangers, seamlessly moving between them all. And Tear the Roof Off was a perfect example because it started out with Tear the Roof Off, which is like this classic street banger, and then moved into a club banger at the end of it, or not the end, like the middle. You gotta go watch it or whatever.
Right.
But here's the thing, if I'm being real, I don't even remember the Tear the Roof Off part of the song. All I remember is Party Going Over Here for one particular reason. Old girl in the white dress. Before I even show this, I know there are men my age having flashback to those teenage years who already know who and what I'm talking about. Even though there are multiple men in this video wearing white dresses, we know the one I'm talking about. Now today in the progressive, sexually liberated, and let's be honest, overly pornified time of the 2020s, this bit of underboob is rather tame. But in the late 90s, this much side or underboob was literally too much for TV. So much, in fact, that it was actually censored on BET and MTV, which in some ways brought more attention because now my horny teenage brain just wanted to see exactly what was being covered up. In a time without OnlyFans and 1G internet, your imagination as a young man was your best friend or some tapes that one of your uncles left lying around without hiding properly.
Yeah. I remember that. Even though it happened further back, the magazines, we had magazines. Boy, you go over Uncle's house, and the only thing I wanted to do was go upstairs. I couldn't wait to get out the car so I can go in the house and go upstairs. After all the adults start talking, yeah, I'm with you on that one, baby.
So blurred out or implied nudity was as enticing as hardcore penetration. So I would find myself always watching to see what Miss White Dress was hiding, to see if there was some detail or angle that they missed that I could catch. And it wasn't until a couple of years later that I would actually get to see the video in all its glory because of a show called BET Uncut.
Yeah.
BET Uncut was a show that aired late night on BET. Wikipedia says it aired at 3 a.m. I couldn't find any other sources for it, but my hazy memory tells me that it had to come on early. I feel like it was more like 11 p.m. Yeah. Because I wouldn't stand up at 3 a.m. to watch BET Uncut. I feel like, you know, the Gooner brain at the time may have made me feel like it was different, but I swear at 11:30 I was able to see some, you know, video ads, but maybe I'm wrong. I want to talk about Uncut because while it doesn't have anything explicit to do with Diddy, it has everything to do with what hip hop was becoming as the party was going on in the 2000s. Uncut was something new for the hip hop world. Pretty girls are nothing new to any hot-blooded, male-oriented genre of music, whether it be the heroin chic models in the background of Robert Palmer's Simply Irresistible or the 80s rock girls literally having cherry pies fall in their crotch from Warrant's Cherry Pie video. And hip-hop had its share of video girls way back in the 80s, but Tear the Roof Off and Uncut was an escalation and a change in the tone of things. It's hard to perfectly explain the transition, but the best way I can put it is while video models in earlier eras of hip hop were sexy and attractive, the video models that came in 2000, better known as video vixens for a while, were also sexy and attractive, but different. The vibes were different, and we gotta unpack why those vibes weren't that good. One of the best ways to like show this difference is just in the aesthetic. While it's expected that fashion trends will change over time, we're also talking about changes in their bodies and phenotypical standards. Older hip hop and R&B videos do have their fair share of lighter skinned women, but darker skinned black women were much more prominent and typical as main features in the media. Also, the bodies of these women aired on the side of thin and dancer-like, probably because a lot of these women were professional models and dancers. This still presented some challenges to darker skinned black women as it pertained to beauty standards, but it wasn't yet what fellow video essayist 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 labeled as the rise of the slim, thick video girl. In the Vixen era, we saw the rise and focus on black women with some serious curves. Bodies had always been loved and appreciated in black culture, but not centered in the media, not seen as the epitome of black feminine desirability. Buffy the Body, Melissa Ford, 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 Johnson, and my personal all-time fave, Bria Miles. These women reset the standard for idealized body types for black women at a new pretty much unattainable level. And you can argue that their popularity with these types of bodies in the 2000s is why we have a rise in certain surgeries for Black women today. In fact, looking at the bodies that we see with Vixens in the 2000s and the early 2010s, they seem small and tame compared to some of the extreme body proportions that we've normalized today. On top of the bodies, there was also the phenotype. Colorism, which has always been a thing in Black culture, became much more prominent in this era. Those dark-skinned women that were prominent in the 80s and 90s were pushed to the side or outright left out for lighter skin, smaller, more exotic features, and or biracial or ambiguous Blackness, which became the standard, making for an even more extreme erasure of dark-skinned Black women that's happening in the media right now. There were so many awful things with this era, and there was pushback. There's notoriously the story of Tip Drill by Nelly, probably the Shawshank Redemption of Uncut videos. This song, which was meant to be played in the strip club from jump, so let's like appropriately situated if we're gonna try to be fair, features Nelly and his group, the Saint Lunatics. Name 4 Saint Lunatics. Name 4. Were there 4? There might have only been 2. I don't know. I remember Murphy Lee. That's all I got for y'all. Anyway, Nelly and the Saint Lunatics invited a bunch of strippers to a mansion for a party, and they just had a ball. There's butts and thighs and boobs everywhere, and it's a good time if you take it at face value. These are ostensibly all consenting adults. Big money rappers are paying to see these dancers for their time and talents, and nobody was hurt, depending on your feelings about the male gaze and objectification. There may have been a moment where a man slid a credit card between a woman's butt cheeks that, of course, you're only seeing if you're watching the Nebula version. But while the culture as a whole saw this as good, clean fun, others recognized the implicit harm not necessarily being done to anyone involved, but from the growing misogyny in hip hop. Because the Vixen era wasn't just about like explicit victims suffering in silence. It was also about a very strong, growing shift in perceptions and attitudes towards women and sex, especially Black women and Black sex. Make no mistake, the commodification of women is nothing new. Sex work is nothing new. Misogyny is nothing new. It should not be seen as this uniquely Black male thing, which is too often the case. But I have to recognize that the magnitude of sex on sale in hip hop at the time was different and low-key unprecedented, at least for hip hop culture. The overt connection between sex and access to it and success in hip hop was different. Little known underground rap artists could spend, I don't know, a tax refund check and hire some strippers and shoot a video and then suddenly have their video be on cable TV, on BET Uncut, exposed to hundreds of thousands, maybe even millions of new eyes. Rappers and wannabe moguls used to need talent and personality and a bit of luck to get on, but now all they had to do was buy access to Black women's bodies. Before, these women were there for show and maybe for a good time, but now more than ever, they were there to validate the legitimacy of who brought them in. And most significantly, as the viewer, they were there for you. Again, 𝗗𝗢𝗡 explains this pretty well. Sometimes after that Tip Drill video blew up, Spelman College, the historically Black all-women's college in Atlanta, that's one of the top colleges, pretty much period, and inarguably the top college for Black women in the country. Someone invited Nelly to do a bone marrow drive. Nelly had become a cancer advocate in the name of his sister, who would eventually die of leukemia. The backlash to this video, however, caused an uproar, as many of the women at Spelman felt some type of way that a man that had been recently seen sliding a credit card between a Black woman's butt cheeks was going to just waltz into the most prestigious school for Black women ever and not at least have a conversation about what he was doing with his art. And this, of course, didn't really go well. There's a lot of misinformation about this event, which I know firsthand. This story ended up getting national news coverage, and they made it seem like Spelman students were just looking to hold large-scale protests. It was just a bunch of women not letting a man have a good time, but that wasn't really the case. What was requested was a private conversation. It's really sadly emblematic of how Black women often do have to confront some Black men with the most gentle, softest energy. But they really wanted to just call him in as opposed to call him out. But for Nelly, this was a bridge too far, and he canceled the event. Something he's still seen mad about in 2013 when he says he blames the women at Spelman for his sister's death. At the time, especially with the disingenuous framing of the story, I sided with Nelly. He was trying to do something good with his fame. He shouldn't have to face protests.
I asked everybody that didn't like it. I said, what did I do wrong? I said, it may not have been within your taste, but what did I really do wrong?
I also then, and still to an extent now, feel like there's a way that these types of conflicts do strip the agency from the women involved and becomes kind of just fun policing.
They're grown. It's not like she was a child. It's not like I manipulated her into thinking. You see what I'm saying? And if you really had a problem with what I was doing, why wouldn't you go to them and ask her? You know what I'm saying? Why not interview the girl and say, how could you let somebody do that to you? And then if she feels bad, then you can come to me and say, yo, you made her feel bad. But see, everyone didn't ask. Nobody asked her. Everyone came directly to me with that shit.
There is sometimes a lazy analysis of these things as if all of these women and all of these men are operating in a completely imbalanced power dynamic where the women can only be exploited, not actually having agency or enjoying what they do. In fact, this is a strongly believed rumor that from my time in school was absolute fact, but I couldn't find any corroboration right now. So I have to say this with a grain of salt. But there were Spelman girls in the tip drill video. But that's really mostly FD from the mid 2000s in the middle of this era, not FD that's gotten older, done more research, done more reading, and has a better understanding of how these things work. This is not the FD that actually worked in anti-sex trafficking and unfortunately knows that even good, clean fun has unintended consequences for other people you're not thinking about while you're having that fun. Diddy is not unique. He was preceded again by Epstein and Weinstein and a bunch of other people to whom we've never heard their names. One of the biggest abusers and sexual weirdos of all time might be president by the time this video comes out. But there is something to say, something that other scholars of Black masculinity try to, not agree with will say, that recognizes that there are certain Black men seeking to play out that masculine role power fantasy in the ways that we've watched white men do for generations, going all the way back to the James Bonds and hairband era that we just saw in the 90s. Black men have often witnessed white men do pretty much whatever they desired with women while being blocked from any consequences. And Black men are blocked from the economic and social capital to make such power possible. And while I think a lot of Black men would argue they are not imitating white masculinity when performing misogyny and patriarchy with our own women, I think it'd be incredibly facetious, especially at a time when half the rappers were imitating mafia crime bosses in their music, to say that that wasn't an effect. What we see in hip hop with Puff and with all these other figures who may or may not be pulled down with Puff is the imitation of the patriarchal ideal, which comes with the idea that as a man with money and power and respect, I can do whatever I want with women as long as I have those three things over them. And even as I want to defend hip hop and always point out that culture influences art and not the other way around, I can't lie and say that being inundated with that imagery and that energy changed the way I perceive the world around me. Even I, as a guy that was never much of a ladies' man, still engage with women in a very specific and often bordering on toxic way. I remember being in college and harboring certain negative attitudes. I remember hearing things about girls and witnessing things that I thought maybe were wrong, but thought, man, I shouldn't say anything. That's not my place. And I'm not going to blame it completely on the culture that was surrounding me at the time. But I will say that that conversation that Spelman was trying to have to confront Nelly to help educate and shine light on the problems of this culture being unchallenged in the way we consume and perceive it, I definitely could have benefited from that then and definitely benefited from that over time as I got older. I want to be clear, I am not alone, and I'm on the mild side of things because so many people, male and female, attached to this culture, attached to this industry, attached to the music, have way more skeletons in their closet than many of them would like to admit. Mind you, this is an industry being ran by the same people that started Freaknik at the time. I always have to bring up the fact that, one, I was too young to actually go to Freaknik.
Freaknik. Y'all remember? Me, I'm 58, baby. Freaknik. Yeah. In Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia. I want to say Atlanta, Georgia. I can't, Freaknik. It just moved to Diddy's freak off parties. It's the same thing, but Freaknik was more of a public, everybody just go down to Atlanta and let's have a bunch of fun.
To admit, mind you, this is an industry being ran by the same people that started Freaknik at the time. I always have to bring up the fact that, one, I was too young to actually go to Freaknik. I just want to make sure that's clear. But if you're under the age of 30, please understand, these are your parents I'm talking about. This is who was in charge of the culture at the time.
Atlanta is the strip club mecca. And when I was in college 25 years ago, if you were a stripper, you went to the next state and you hit it. You didn't want anybody to know. And you were doing it because you needed money to pay for college. That was what my understanding was. Right. It is a celebration now to be a dancer. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that was because it was accepted and glorified by the hip hop community. Had it not been accepted or glorified by the hip hop community, it would remain in its own space as a place where wealthy people go and spend money and have a level of entertainment. The thing about the adult entertainment industry is that young people and vulnerable people automatically get caught up in it.
There's no real separation of those economies. Like you
would like to separate it, but you really can't, to be honest, because you get caught up in it.
I always thought the Me Too movement would never be able to dismantle the urban music industry.
Explain.
Because when the Me Too movement was popping off, it was very white woman centric, and it was very woman good, man bad. And my favorite quote from Bell Hooks is "Patriarchy has no gender." And particularly in the urban music industry, from my experience, the women might not be the doers, but they were the enablers, they were the handlers, they were the facilitators. You know, when you think of assistants going to do things and booking things and getting products and making sure people were flying out, all women facilitate keeping Cassie in a room. It is a woman doing some of the more violent work that keeps.
It was a woman covering up her makeup. She did an interview also. I mean, covering up her bruises with the makeup. My bad.
People entrapped into these cycles.
We've all been hearing the whispering about who about to get questioned next. And that's going to break my entire fucking heart. But oh well, let it burn. That's what happens. I hope they knew that when they left and stood there and did nothing, that these are some consequences of that. And and they not just did nothing, but like participated supposedly.
The biggest blow to the Vixen era narrative of it being good, clean fun comes in the defining text of that era, the book Confessions of a Video Vixen by Karen Steffens, who also goes by Elizabeth Ovenson.
It's almost like there's a radar that goes out when you're a new girl in LA. Like the guys just know you're fresh meat.
This book set the world on fire in a way that seems inconceivable today. Maybe it's because she was the first to do it, but I couldn't imagine a woman, especially a black woman, getting this much attention in mainstream media coverage for their expose on the realities of what's going on in the world of sex and hip hop behind the scenes. This was a very scandalous tell-it-all that allowed the story of a black woman being incredibly promiscuous be its core narrative device. And of course, there was a lot of pushback at the time, but it was still very much like accepted, rewarded, and focused on in the wide pop culture in a way that black women usually just don't get to do. Steffens regaled her trysts with notable rappers and black celebrities at the time, including alleged couplings with Vin Diesel, Ja Rule, Dr. Dre, Lil Wayne, Jay-Z, and of course Diddy. But what's wild is that's kind of the core thing people think about in this book, not the immense abuse and trauma and turmoil that she went through before becoming a victim to this industry or after being a victim in this industry. Steffens speaks to the ugly truth around what was happening to many of those women that were there for the good, clean fun.
Well, the relationship had been going downhill because it was an abusive relationship, and it had been almost from the start.
Okay.
So we were together for about 4 years. I had gotten pregnant earlier in the relationship and had an abortion.
You had an abortion originally?
Yes.
Okay. That was something you wanted to do or he wanted to do?
That's something that he wanted.
Okay.
So and it was hard. I was 17, he was 27. It was difficult for me. I was 17. It was my first time being pregnant, and but that's something that he forcefully made sure happened.
She herself escaped to that lifestyle because she had come from such a harsh and abusive environment because of her father, her mother, sexual assaults that she suffered as a young lady, poverty, and even epilepsy. And she says outright in her book that this entry into the world of hip hop was first and foremost an escape. It was not really just about fun. It was her recognizing that her body could be a ticket out.
All my life I had been doing things to get money. You know what I mean? Even when I was dancing, I was giving that service to get that money. And so I had already...
When you say service, what?
Just the dancing, just the being on stage, taking your clothes off to get that $1,000.
But because of what she had went through before even entering in the industry, it allowed her to further go through that while she was in the industry.
The video world has become a cult kind of environment where you have a particular group of video girls, you know, and there are different types of video girls. You can be the dancing girl, or the model girl, the actress girl, and it's very easy to be exploited in that particular field. You have 3 minutes to prove yourself. In those 3 to 4 minutes, you have to be the most exciting, the most beautiful, the most voluptuous. It's difficult to do that and still come across as intelligent intelligent. A lot of times you can't have both. And so you end up in some way partially exploiting yourself.
And the thing that you have to recognize here is that while there are plenty of women that are there for good, clean fun and there to get paid and there to just have a good time that they can look back on, there's not like a check to make sure that every woman entering into that world was coming in with their head on straight and with no issues behind them that would make them likely to be a target for men like Diddy or men like 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦, who was technically married, technically probably dating 𝗗𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 at the time and had gotten access to 𝗗𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 Stephens from Ja Rule.
Instantly, I just started meeting people.
And you met?
The first person I bumped into out was Ja Rule at a club. And it was 5 days of nonstop sex.
And then on top of all this, it was 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦 that introduced her to Diddy as a gift. This book came out in the late 2000s at the height of Diddy's popularity, so it makes sense that she's relatively nice to Diddy and describes him as a fun and charismatic guy, though she does imply the existence of freak-offs at different sections in the book and talks about Diddy once took her and another rapper she was dating, Exhibit, to a gay club. But what I want to focus on is this idea that she met Diddy as a gift from 𝗟𝗡𝗡𝗞𝗦. Gotti saw her as a possession and was into the idea of sharing her, giving her to other men like Diddy. And while in the book she implies to be a fun time, when things started happening with Diddy, she talked about how she understands now that she was being shared as a commodity. And I would go further to say that this wasn't ever about her. It was about the men involved. People that know a lot about abusive men know that abuse is never about the woman, it's about power. And in fact, a lot of these powerful, deviant, predatory men low-key don't even like women. They don't really do what they do in service of women. More than anything, their energy and attention is focused on other men. They want in a way to be desired by other men. And I don't mean this in an explicitly sexual way, even though obviously this was true as it pertained to Diddy. I mean in a psychosexual, homoerotic way that doesn't really have to include actual physical sex between these two men. Now I'm getting into my barbershop philosophy bag for a second, but bear with me. You ever wonder why so many rappers end up dating the same exact women and then be mad and fighting and dissing each other over it? Like the very concerning story of Ruby Rose, who's been linked to Playboy Cardi, Drewski, Cam Newton, Soulja Boy again. But concerningly, some of the rappers she's dated, allegedly such as 21 Savage and Travis Scott, met her as a minor.
Because there are rumors about you and various famous men. I'm going to name a few.
Okay, I'll tell you which one.
You could react.
Okay.
Travis Scott.
When I was younger. Oh wait, actually I shouldn't do this. I shouldn't do this game.
These are isolated examples, but if you're up on that particular part of hip hop culture and pop culture, you'll know that there are dozens of women that have just been, for lack of a better way of putting it, traveling around their industry dating different rappers. And it's not that those women don't deserve to be desired or loved by any particular man, but it is indicative of the fact that some of the key elements of these women's desirability is the fact that other men have had them that are also seen as powerful and significant within the industry.
The dudes that come into the club for the actual girls are not the ones throwing up ones. The ones that came in to actually see us, they're quiet about it. They gonna slide you to hundreds. They don't want the niggas around them paying attention to what they got going on because they came to pay attention to you. But I'm not saying like everybody that does this in the strip. This is fun. I throw ones in the strip club. It's fun, but it is definitely for fucking attention.
Right.
And who are you getting attention from? Like obviously the dancers were there, but the hundreds of other men in the fucking building. Everybody is looking at where all the money is coming.
And this is not unique to the hip hop industry. This is something that happens with Black athletes, celebrities, powerful men across the board throughout history have participated in this unique phenomenon. Think of Marilyn Monroe, who dated not just brothers, but like multiple powerful men the same way that Ruby Rose did. A look into Diddy's accusations shows a pretty clear inclination that some of his abuse towards women is completely steeped in this homoerotic competition. Diddy wanted others to join him in abusing and degrading women, even at times degrading men as a bonding practice. In the accusations levied towards him regarding Cassie, it said that he paid other male prostitutes to have sex with her while he filmed, and that he would send these films to other men in the industry. The thing I think a lot of people don't understand about this type of violence towards women is that sexual assault is never really about sex. It's almost always about power and control, which is often how some men excuse their behavior when they're not being overtly violent or sexually deviant. They just see it as a part of good, clean fun. When you look at how men like Weinstein or Russell Simmons downplay their accusers, it's often in saying, well, she was there and open to it, or what do you think she was there for? She just wanted to be famous and wanted to be with the powerful men. Russell even said that he can't be a rapist because he's not beating women over the head, which is like, I'm happy that nigga's on an island somewhere away from other people.
Rape is a strong allegation, and some of these stories were that you pinned women down. I mean, like bad stuff, you know, either happened or it didn't, right?
Yeah, well, you know, it's a serious word, but I think they've changed the meaning.
How so?
I've never been violent to anybody. The rape is a violent crime, so it is a very serious. Somebody jumps out of bushes and rapes somebody, it's different, I think. So it's a different kind of recollection. I mean, so I don't think anybody's saying it was violent. Of course, I've been insensitive, but certainly I've never been forceful.
The access to these women and the ability to control them was a standard set.
Hold up. Wait a minute, man. I don't care. The R word, grape. To hear. God dang it. I'm sorry. Oh, man. You got to watch. Anyway. Russell Simmons. Back to what I was going to say. I got to do business also. If you're about to have a relationship with a man or woman or whatever, another person, and they want to do the smooching and making it out and all this type of stuff, but when they say no and you keep going, that's the R word. No means yes. No means yes. No. I said no. Stop. No. And now you forcing yourself on that person. That's the R word, cousin. I said no plenty of times, and you still saying, oh my God, come on, man. And you talking about jumping out the bushes. Nah, you don't need no bush. You don't need no bush.
Violent. Of course, I've been insensitive, but certainly I've never been forceful.
The access to these women and the ability to control them was a standard set among these men. BET Uncut transmuted their
spiking the drinks. Now they knocked out. They don't know what's going on. They wake up and be like, I feel different. You feel different down there. And you know what happened. You can put two and two together. That's aura.
But certainly I've never been forceful.
Yeah, access to these women and the ability to control them was a standard set among these men. BET Uncut transmuted their bodies into genuine currency for greater access and trained a generation of young people to see that as normal. And even now, as much as I enjoy my fair share of ratchet, female-oriented gangster rap, I'm a 𝗗𝗓𝗡 fan, I'm a Meg Thee Stallion fan, etc. Even as they are taking back a level of agency on their sexuality and bodies as a part of the hip-hop art form, it's still participating and reinforcing the same culture. We see women sexualizing themselves and inviting the male gaze on their terms. And yes, some of the same men that promoted this behavior 20 years ago are acting like they don't like it now because they're centered in the dynamic, which is weird in and of itself, but it doesn't mean that the consequences, those unintended consequences of those displays, are any less hazardous for women, or I should say younger girls who aren't famous rappers who are participating in the culture, to not be exposed to harm, to not end up getting exploited by those with more power than them. Because that's what this issue is about, power and exploitation. Who has the power and who doesn't? Who does the exploitation and who's getting exploited? And this brings us back to Diddy. Diddy's behavior is monstrous, but it's important to understand that he is a monster of our creation, of the creation of that culture that we all enjoyed for a good 15 years before he started to finally die down. And at that point, he was already off and running with the most heinous of behavior. And what's, I don't want to say funny, but interesting in all of this is that Diddy wasn't like a specific mastermind of the video Vixen concept. In fact, I don't have a strong recollection of Diddy doing any really exploitative stuff with women on screen in his videos, etc. He talked a good game in his music, of course, but his imagery was almost meant to be seen as too classy and upscale for the type of booty shaking that you'd see on BET Uncut. It goes to show how appearances can be deceiving. Because Puffy wanted to present as acceptable and viable among this white audience, he didn't do the pouring champagne on strippers move too much in public. He was a high-end, upscale party guy. He wasn't the freak off guy, at least publicly.
Exploiters typically tend to show what
Facts.
they want to certain people. So most people who might be on a list, most people in the industry can say they went to a Diddy party. But I'm pretty sure a large amount of those people said, I never saw any of that. And yes, I was at the party. Certain people, just like when they people who went to, yes, I flew to Epstein's Island. They may not have ever seen what goes on behind certain closed doors. So what happens is exploiters tend to create that narrative so that one person can staunchly say, that is not what happened. And they say it because it is true for them, but it does not erase what this other person's truth was.
Right.
And that's how exploiters create division. That's how they create this gray area of how do we believe which person? And this person has to be a liar because this person said it was true.
But that's the whole thing. His public facing image and his behind the scenes image were very, very different, which is, I guess, somewhat scary because not only was Diddy like being misogynistic and abusive towards women behind the scenes, he was doing that to anybody he had power over.
I guess this is part 3 right here, man.
Despite everything I talked about in the last chapter, there's still this sense of shock about Puffy's behavior being exposed. But why? How can we even think to use the word expose here? Because that word makes you think that this is a surprising reveal, that this stuff was being hidden, but it wasn't. It hasn't. So much of the things that anybody's going to talk about with Puff are public knowledge, not just public knowledge, like you had to do some Googles and research, like literal touchstone moments in hip hop history. We know about the public fights. I alluded to the conspiracy theories around Biggie's death and Tupac's death. But what's often glossed over to me that's more indicative of who this man is what happened to Puff's biggest act after Biggie, from that same era when Puff presented Mace as his next biggest thing. After Big died, Diddy shifted all of his efforts and attention to Mace, who didn't have quite the gangster veneer of Biggie, though it's eventually revealed that the decision to make Mace more of a ladies' man was a Puffy creation. Because Mace has such a cool, kind of like smooth veneer, Puff realized that it would be much easier to fit him into his framework as, you know, the pretty boy Mason Betha versus Murder Mace, who he was before Puff signed him.
Started rapping about 3 years ago, and I basically went to Atlanta to meet somebody else, but I ran into Puff and he gave me a shot, and I just try to make the best of my opportunity.
So Mace was like a mix between Drake and DaBaby, maybe. That's the best. That may not make any sense. That's definitely gonna date me, because like, when has DaBaby been relevant in the last several years? But that's, I apologize, old head moment. You get my point. And all this came together in Mace's first album, Harlem World, where we saw that Mace, though not the typical boom bap extra hardcore lyricist, was still pretty solid on the mic. He had an amazing flow. Puff's production worked perfectly with it. We also get some of the first beats from the Neptunes. That song, Looking at Me, one of the biggest bangers of the era that's low-key kind of slept on. But not really low-key, because the album sold 200,000 in its first week, which was big even back then. And over several years, it was certified platinum. So Mace, much like Biggie, was often running with a lot of success.
Yes, Mace, his CD, it went #1, debuted at #1?
Yes, I mean, that's like astonishing. The only other person to do that is like myself and Snoop Dogg.
But 2 years later, as Mace released his second album that no one remembers, already things are taking on some weird and drastic changes. Mace announced that he was leaving the music industry to become a preacher.
But Mace was huge. Harlem World was huge.
Multi-platinum.
Huge album with huge songs that still hold up to this day.
The first Neptunes hip hop track, I believe.
Yes.
And I never forget when I first heard, what was that? Why are you over there looking at me?
Right. Mace was so big.
Yeah.
That album was so big. And within one album, he said, I got to get out. I got to need Jesus and to get as far away from that man as possible. And that really stood out to me. To me, that is when, and the people I was around too, truthfully, that's when we started talking about, well, how evil is Diddy really?
Mace gave a lot of reasons for leaving before.
Wow, that's crazy, man. How Because everybody was leaving. But see, that's behind the doors. Us producers and people that's, we reading who wrote this song, who produced this song. We are like puzzled. Like, God dang, how come no bad boy recording artist is living the good life? Especially when I dealt with a couple of them. That's crazy, man.
Really stood out to me. To me, that is when, and the people I was around too, truthfully, that's when we started talking about, well, how evil is Diddy really?
Mase gave a lot of reasons for leaving before and after, and in the preceding years would return to the rap game and leave multiple times. However, in recent years, especially after starting his successful podcast with longtime friend and fellow rapper Cam'ron, Mase has been very explicit about his issues with Puff and very clear about him being a snake and making more than a few allusions to the crimes and abuses towards women and men that have followed Diddy for years.
Since Cain killed Abel, I'm able to kill Cain. And love don't steal, my nigga, change your name. Come on. And I see no integrity in your name. And I'm haunted by the ghost of St. James. Champagne King, match my rolling plain James. And I say, blame God I ain't changed. And if niggas never found a killer, why is niggas living it? Everybody broke niggas gotta blame the visionary. Niggas be selling their soul to go to a brunch. Niggas might end up sweet, drinking that punch. I suffer good. And niggas know I'm from another hood. Forget a brotherhood, I'm trying to make sure that my mother good.
God, I'm trying to make sure my mother's good.
I'm doing good, man. Reparations is getting closer and closer.
At the time, this seemed like just a dramatic blow up, but it wouldn't be the only one. It would become a first in a series of artists signed to Puff that left him under the worst circumstances. For really most of Diddy's career, it seemed like every artist to make a splash that was closely connected to him eventually fell out with the label on the worst terms. Big died. Craig Mack, Puffy's first major breakthrough artist, fell into a cult and eventually died himself. Mase retired. The Lox escaped and never messed with Diddy afterward. Black Rob left and died sick and in poverty. Loon left over money and also retired and converted to Islam. G-Dep was dropped after flopping, had an addiction to PCP, and then in an effort to get right with God, confessed to a 15-year-old murder which put him in jail for over a decade. 112, Diddy's most successful R&B group, left after their run, but not without lawsuits over royalties, and almost everyone from Diddy's run of reality TV show artists has sued him, with several suing him right now for abuse. And those are just the things that I remember vividly that like we knew. There's probably way more behind the scenes that we don't know.
You're just starting to sound more believable, you know? And then you start looking at all the other people around him who just end up going to jail. Like, you know, Loon went to jail, Shine went to jail, G-Dep went to jail. Like everybody around him was like dead or in jail.
Lox left real early.
Yep. And they were loudly talking.
They have the skit Raping You Records.
Right.
And I listened to that today for the first time in forever. I'm like, yo.
Right.
And he says, if you can't be my artist, I can't rape you. I gotta rape you. And he's talking about like it's not getting into the diddler stuff, but it's bumping up against it.
It's bumping up heavy.
It's bumping up heavy.
But the people involved in these scenarios, it probably takes them decades to realize that they were victims. That this is so well positioned by a multitude of people as an opportunity, as a way to get into an industry, as a, just like, you're special because you get access to this wealth and power. And the interesting thing is people get fixated on Diddy's sexual engagement with men because of homophobia. But like men are also socialized to just take more beatings and just pass it on to the next person, regardless of their sexuality. Particularly men in the entertainment industry will allow people to abuse them outright because it gives them proximity to wealth, and then they will just abuse the next person.
Yeah, they take it out on the next person. I think about Shine quietly taking that case for Diddy. This type of exploitative power was so normal that it was expected, because please believe Diddy is not alone, not just in the possibility of sex crimes, but in the exploitative nature of the entire industry. While in many ways Diddy is uniquely bad, specifically with his sex crimes, understand that he is just a part of a greater culture of exploitation. Almost all the celebrity record executives that we knew and loved during that era moved the exact same way. Jay-Z snaked Benny Siegel out of opportunities, to which Benny Siegel holds a grudge for to this day. Also, the way Jay-Z sold out Rockefeller Records under the nose of Dame Dash, who has really never recovered from this, is one of the dirtiest moves in the history of hip hop. Baby of Cash Money Records fame is notorious for snaking people out of money. He and Lil Wayne aren't cool to this day because of unpaid funds, and Baby not paying Pharrell for the beat and what happened to that boy is low-key the butterfly effect of how we eventually get to the Drake versus Kendrick Lamar beef from earlier this year. Speaking of Pharrell, although he's quite beloved in the culture and is presented as one of the industry's good guys, when it comes to this exploitative practice, he's no different. Remember that whole beef between Beyonce and Khalees a couple of years ago when Beyonce dropped Renaissance and had a song sampling Khalees' voice on the album and tried to give her a feature credit, and Khalees got angry about it because she knew she wasn't getting paid from that feature, and she knew Beyonce knew this. Now, the way that eventually played out was wrong because Khalees started beefing with Beyonce when Khalees' real beef is with Pharrell, because Pharrell owns Khalees' publishing for most of her music up until a certain point, and right after that point is when Khalees quit doing music. And Khalees on numerous occasions fought and tried to sue Pharrell to get control of that publishing, which is all the money made off of her music, and he has refused up until this day, which is why Beyonce paid him instead of Khalees for her own voice. That issue of publishing and ownership is the hyper-capitalistic aspect of the music industry that has been around to this day. That's one of the reasons why it was low-key made a big deal of when Diddy gave people back their publishing a couple of years before all of this started to happen, probably because he knew that all of this was about to start happening. But the point here is to recognize that the exploitation of the women in this case is just a different category of the exploitation of everybody involved. Because exploitation is a core feature of this industry, artists create amazing art and the industry seeks ways to exploit that art to the fullest. And it'd be one thing if they just took a portion of the artist's earnings as a repayment for investing in them, or they paid a fee over the course of being on the label or something along those lines. But these record labels, going back to all those names I listed early on with Rakim, they don't just get money from their investment, they own the rights to the artist's music and publishing, meaning that those great songs that you love from your favorite artist, when you stream that, when you play it on a CD or a record, even if you're just going to a concert, even if you're going to a party and hearing a DJ play the music live, that money isn't going to those artists if those artists don't own their publishing rights. If they don't own that, they don't get money from it. And this is something that Black artists have dealt with throughout American music history, going back to artists like Ma Rainey and Chuck Berry. Historically, Black artists have always gotten the least out of their talent because the industry has always used the ignorance of those artists to the business of the industry against them. And particularly in hip hop, it's also used the desperation of the poverty, that same poverty that made hip hop possible in a lot of cases, was used against those artists who were wanting to be rap stars, wanting to sign a deal so they could get some money so they could eat and get out the streets. And because people like Puff and Jay, and of course the bigger people above them at Sony and Universal.
Pause. I shouldn't even stop, y'all. They good. Oh, shoot. Trying to do too many things at one time. Now let's get back to this. Here we go.
And Warner, these signed a deal so they could get some money so they could eat and get out the streets. And because people like Puff and Jay, and of course the bigger people above them at Sony and Universal and Warner, these executives know that if they go find someone who is thirsty like a Benny Siegel or a Saigon or a J-Quan or Chingy or Gorilla Zoe or so many other folks that we don't think about but have made relevant.
My bad, y'all. My bad. Hold on.
And because people like Puff and Jay, and of course the bigger people above them at Sony and Universal and Warner, these executives know that if they go find someone who is thirsty like a Benny Siegel or
I don't know him, but I work with him.
Or before. Saigon or a J-Quan or
Chingy. Work with him also, man. Played in the band. He was a dynamite drummer.
Gorilla Zoe or so many other folks that we don't think about but have made relevant, significant splashes in hip hop during that time period up till now. If those people are in the struggle and looking to eat, just like those same Black women earlier, when they're in the struggle, looking to eat with nothing to lose, you can give them a little piece of anything and then have complete control over them in perpetuity. And that's the rappers. That's the people with a voice. Those are the people with followers. So imagine, or maybe don't imagine, what was happening behind the scenes, what is possible for the seemingly hundreds and in reality thousands of women and girls, and sometimes boys and men, caught up in the underbelly of this vicious industry.
You know, what I couldn't never figure out is there's some of the people he named and a whole lot more have way more talent in different parts of the music industry, right? But you got these people that don't have that much talent way up here. Like Puffy is like, well, if you do whatever I ask you to do, because I don't have no talent either, brother, and look how high I got. So you don't need talent to get this high. You just need to be able to learn how to do negative things to other people, and you can get this high. You down? Yeah, I'm down. That's what I think. Jesus.
I want to end with a brief discussion of something that might come off a bit hokey, like a conspiracy theory, but it actually ends up leading me to a different point, something that Justin Hunt brought to my attention at the end of our conversation.
First of all, corporate America is made and built for white men. So when you're going into corporate America, usually your entryway is to help them with their diversity problem. But at the end of the day, you want to be able to open up doors. Sometimes you got to take that opportunity and get in. And so that's what I did with 𝗟𝗡. But I told him I don't work for nobody. Everything in my portfolio I own. So you guys have to know my ultimate dream is a tequila.
The other side of it too is, you know, there's real conversations around the Diageo situation, putting a different type of light on him.
Ever the chaser of the bag, the chaser of money, power, and respect, ever the party guy and promoter, ever the black capitalist, Puff did what many black capitalists have done before him. Something I talked about way back in my Black Conservatives video. He parlayed his access to us, his popularity amongst us, into big bucks for him, being the moneyed white power structures that he gained access to through his relationship with us. In 2007, he went into a partnership with Diageo, a multinational alcohol company that's worth nearly $80 billion and basically runs the alcohol industry. If you're drinking at a club, you're drinking something that they made. He will help them promote their struggling 𝗟𝗡 label and get 50% of the proceeds. And of course, soon after this deal is done, you constantly see Diddy with 𝗟𝗡 talking about 𝗟𝗡 in 𝗟𝗡 commercials. He is inseparable from the liquor, and 𝗟𝗡 becomes a staple of hip hop high life aesthetics. And surely this makes Diddy a lot of money. However, this deal was a lot like the deals that Diddy signed his artists to. He did all the important work. 𝗟𝗡 was nothing before him, but Diageo still owned 𝗟𝗡 at the end of the day and made most of those proceeds. Diddy was just talent to them. And this didn't sit right with Diddy for obvious reasons, considering that he knows how talent is treated in the entertainment business.
But people's liquor tastes change, right? So tequila became the hot thing. So Diddy goes and buys De Leon. I know you've seen Diddy push De Leon in recent years. Yeah. So he's pushing De Leon tequila, and he owned half of it, and Diageo owned the other half, right? And so Diageo is in charge of distribution and manufacturing of the business. And they were really upset that Diddy was so successful with 𝗟𝗡. They went from selling 40,000 cases of 𝗟𝗡 a year to 2.2 million a year, right? So, wow.
So being the black capitalist, Diddy buys his own liquor company, De Leon, and then gets into another partnership with Diageo to do the same thing for De Leon as 𝗟𝗡. He would use, again, his access to us, his popularity due to us to build up his own liquor company that he owned, and then would just use Diageo to produce it and give them a cut of his business. And this would be a sure shot because he had started a whole wave of celebrity endorsed liquor. His presence opened that door, and like years after, you see George Clooney's Casamigos garnering $1 billion on its sales. There's no reason Puffy couldn't have got it more, but he noticed things didn't quite go the same as they did with 𝗟𝗡. Diddy wasn't seeing the same results or enthusiasm behind him promoting a liquor that he personally owned coming from Diageo. And after some investigation, Diddy decides that he needs to go ahead and make something happen. So he sues them for racial discrimination and failure to own up to their end of the business deal they signed with. Surely you see the irony here. Diddy was subtly on the opposite end of the type of business practices that he had participated in for decades. He was fine exploiting other black people on behalf of white businesses. But when Diddy seemingly got too big for his britches, the same white power structure did exactly to him what he was doing to niggas on his label. What we have firsthand is the limit of how far one could actually go playing the dirty game of being a black capitalist. But Diddy did not stop there, because this lawsuit became his thing for the last few years. He went on a black excellence, black wealth crusade. To his credit, doing what everybody says getting you an LLC is supposed to do. Diddy was pushing the envelope and trying to go beyond the natural limitations of black capitalism, always being under white capitalism, y'all. I did a whole video about this. Go watch that video. Anyway, he was trying to own something massive to put him on the same level as the corporations that had always had the real power over him. He attempted to buy BET from Paramount. He tried a black cannabis business. He started the Revolt Network and a few other ventures. And anytime a mic got close to his face, he would speak to black people not selling their wealth, not giving up their resources to white businesses, and saying that black people need to come together and build this wealth so that they could all get free.
We got to start with us stepping up and really taking the responsibility and accountability to be a part of this political movement. People don't really know me. Like, I'm blessed that I have the money to start this political party. I'm not gonna make no apologies for how much cake I get, you know? That has empowered me, but I know once I get it, I'm going to fund the revolution. I'm a black nationalist. I'm unapologetically black. I have to take care of the tribe first.
Which is not just false, but highly ironic coming from this man. And I wasn't the only one to recognize that, as these words were immediately targeted by his former victims in the hip hop world, of which he owned their resources and wealth and had built his wealth off of their labor. People like Mace scoffed at his hypocrisy. How could he sit there talking about black wealth coming together when he's literally stealing it from other black people? I just have to point out, the truth is that's how it's always worked. But I don't have time to get into it. Please just check out the Jay-Z section of my Black Conservatives video for more details there.
He files that suit. Diageo tries to settle it in arbitration. They just want to do a closed door, figure out some deal with it, right? And then release a statement saying that Diddy saying that we're racist is damaging to our brand. It's costing us $1 billion in reputational risk. So the judge decides, no, we're going to take this to trial, and it's going to be a public trial. And then the next month, the Cassie thing happens. And then that January after Cassie, he settles whatever with Diageo. It's one thing with the people that he's hanging out with and partying with, but Diageo is owned by BlackRock and Vanguard.
Yeah. And it's one thing I've talked about in a lot of my more political videos. Like, niggas think they ain't niggas until they really try to fuck with the actual ain't niggas.
Until they try to become the bank.
Unfortunately, or really predictably, we'll never know if Diddy was going to be able to make the possible impossible in his crusade to buy into the highest tiers of our capitalist system. It's not long after Diddy filed his suit against Diageo that the accusations from Cassie and other women start coming in. And it's not long after that Diddy settled his lawsuit out of court with this giant billionaire company. Now, I know that sounds scarily close to he was trying to buy NBC. I know. I'm not trying to do that. People said that about Bill Cosby. It was nonsense then, it's nonsense now. Diddy, much like Cosby, had a significant documented history of his violence and abuse. I'm not in any way trying to undermine that. We literally have video evidence of this abuse. But I do think it would be cool if that was the case. As I said earlier, Diddy, like many a black capitalist, made his money off us. And he used that to go further and further as a mogul and a businessman to icon status. And all the while, it seemed like everyone was well aware of what he was actually doing in front and behind the scenes. And the harm he was doing was fine as long as he was a powerful man harming people who deserved it. Those without power, hungry rappers trying to escape street life, young women looking to be stars, girls just looking for a good time. All people that Diddy did not have to treat as equals or even as humans, all because of who he was, which was attached to us, and we watched it all in silent agreement. But as soon as Puff mistakenly thought that this power rivaled the real juggernauts in the business world that he was emulating, he was quickly shown that no matter how much money he made, no matter the amount of money he spent on mansions or yachts or luxury items or shiny suits, he was still just a nigga from Mount Vernon. So yeah, if this were some type of setup from Diageo, it would low-key be poetic justice. It's a useful reminder to the reality of how this system actually works and why no amount of placating this system, or in the case of Diddy, imitating this system, is ever truly going to work for Black people. There's a lot of speculation that Puffy might possibly end up exposing others as he falls down, that many a celebrity or maybe even a politician has participated in the freak off. And to that I ask, who did Epstein take down? Who did Weinstein take down? And you might say, you know, politicians and Bill.
How can you go with this race card thing because of Puffy, and then you bring up these two white people? That's the part that kills me, man. Everybody keep trying to play the race card. If Puffy was white and did all the stuff he did, and then he tried to sue a liquor company and they got pissed off at him because he brought up the race card, that's what they got mad at and said, F you, we're going to show you, and here's all the dirt. You, no matter what, you got dirt. Dirt is dirt. It ain't no race card on the dirt. You done did this stuff to these people. You done spiked their drinks. I don't care what the race card is. Epstein. Oops, well, we can't play the race card no more, but we're going to still put him in. That's crazy, man. Truly going to work for Black people. There's a lot of speculation that Puffy might possibly end up exposing others as he falls down. Race card. Many a celebrity or maybe even a politician has participated in the freak off. And to that I ask, who did Epstein take down? Who did Weinstein take down? And you might say, you know, politicians and billionaires and princes are different than a couple of rappers and R&B artists, and that's true to an extent. But to create that type of ripple effect really is incompatible with how this system is designed to work. The point of this video is to hopefully get you watching to recognize that the goal for the people that benefit the most from this exploitative system that Diddy took advantage of is for us to hyper focus on him as the only villain in the industry, to look at his downfall as evidence that the system can be fixed and govern itself, that fundamentally all of these systems work and it's just a few bad apples. But history shows us it's not just a few, it's more like a cycle. And this cycle perpetuates itself on its ability to cast off one of its worst actors so that everyone else gets to keep moving unencumbered. We're talking about a culture of violence and exploitation, and Diddy is the result of that. He's the okie doke. He's a bait and switch. This is much bigger than Puff. It's bigger than hip hop. This is, once again, the American way.
Hip hop.
It's definitely bigger than Puffy. It's definitely bigger than Puffy.
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick moment before I wrap things up in the video to recognize the participation of my former boss, Jennifer Swain, and her organization, 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦. If you've watched this video and appreciated it, understand that some of my ability to make this video comes from my experience directly working with child sex trafficking victims at 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 here in Atlanta some years ago when I worked under Jennifer Swain.
Yeah, that's what we need to hear.
As I knew I was going to make this video, knowing the topic and the individual at hand, I knew that there was a chance that people would get caught up in the, you know, sensationalism of the whole story and not realize that most people that are sex trafficking victims aren't engaged with a Diddy. They're engaged in our local neighborhoods and communities. Sadly, Atlanta has one of the highest rates of sex trafficking in the country, if not the world. And Jennifer's organization, 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦, is doing a lot to combat that, but they only do that because of support directly from people. So I myself be putting my money where my mouth is and will be donating $3,000 to 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 from the proceeds of this video. And I hope that those of you that can contribute can do the same. Or if you don't have the funds, please look in the description for information from 𝗗𝗢𝗡𝗞𝗦 on how you can get involved or at least educate yourself to know the reality of sex trafficking and child sex trafficking and how it works. Much like this whole story is bigger than hip hop, the world of sex trafficking and child sex trafficking is very complex. I'll probably release some side content from my interview with Jennifer Swain to further that information, but please, please, please show some support either directly or through some advocacy by looking at the link in the description. And now on to the real. This Diddy video was a long time in the making. Part of that was the usual work that goes into this type of video, but a portion of that was the process I have to go through to get a video like this through all of YouTube's various filters. When you talk about music on YouTube, there's a lot of challenges that come up because using just a snippet of a song, like literally a few seconds, can get your video copyright claimed, where some record label can get all the money from a whole 2-hour video because of a 3-second music clip. Then there's challenges with censorship, which you probably saw. There are parts of this video that were either blurred out or cut because they're a little too raunchy for YouTube's advertisers.
Yeah. We have to do all that stuff, man. So he is letting you know all the difficulties that you're doing that goes with running a YouTube channel, but at the same time, help the kids. We dedicated all 3 of our channels in trying to find ways to help people. That's where I'm at, but everybody want to help the kids and stuff. Help people. We have a live channel, the Music Recording Network Live, which is going on right now, and I need to jump on over there. But long story short, man, this is how I feel. I feel as though if you don't have any dirt, if you haven't done any dirt, then you wouldn't be getting your house broken in by the feds. You wouldn't be denied bail 3 or 4 times, and you wouldn't be in this predicament. No race card. You can call it what you want, man. People have called me Uncle Tom and all that type of stuff, and I feel as though there's a lot of, for lack of a better word, black people that's doing positive and great stuff. But also the way the music industry worked for years. I'm new, I get in, I get all my publishing and all this stuff taken because they're going to market and promote me and make me something I'm not right now. Don't nobody know me. So this is the price you have to pay. Once I get to somewhere where I'm a household name, now here's how you make the money. You go get some artists and you keep they publishing. That's how you start making money. Go on tours or whatever the case may be. I don't know, but it got to work some kind of way like that. It's kind of like that's how the wheel turns. And once you get to the top of the wheel, then you pick some other people up and turn them. Once they get to the top of the wheel, they pick some people up and turn, I'm gonna get on up out of here, man. Y'all take it light. Let me know in the comments what you think. Y'all take it light, take it slow. Tell me Uncle Mike told you so. Peace out.